Hello, folks. This is Bobby Bowen of the Bobby Bowen Show, a brand new show on Facebook, and we're already at our 15th episode, and I can't believe that. And this man that I'm going to be talking with today, a lot of y'all may not know him, but he is a country boy. He sings Christian country music, and I got to meet him a couple of years ago at the Inspirational Country Music Awards, and we've just kind of kept up with each other on Facebook. He travels, him and his wife travel as an evangelist, and they sing and they preach. And this is Johnny Rowlett. Am I saying that right?
You did say it right. Good job, Rowlett.
You know, a lot of people get my name wrong too. It's Bowen. I get called Bobby Bowden a lot of times.
No, that's funny.
Most pastors will introduce me as Bobby Bowen, and I have to correct them. Oh. And I just talked to him right before they introduced us, and he asked me, is it Bowen or Bowen? And I say Bowen, and they get up and say Bowen anyway for some reason. So it's Johnny Rowlett.
Rowlett.
Johnny, thank you for being on my show today. I really appreciate it.
Well, Matt, thank you. The honor is mine. I appreciate you having me on here, and you definitely somebody that I'm grateful to be in relationship with. You guys are people that we look up to a lot out here, and I'm just thankful to be asked. So I'm excited to be on here.
Man, I'm glad that you agreed to do this with us. Like I said, a lot of people probably don't even know you, but they're gonna know you after we get through with this, because we're gonna dig down deep and find out who Johnny really is.
Yeah, that's kind of a scary thought. I'm glad that my wife's not here, because she was like, you don't need to know all that. So let's just go with that.
So she'd probably chip in and tell us a few things that you probably won't tell us, right?
Yeah, right. Yes, very well said. Some things I would not want her to share, but no,
yeah.
I'm just kidding. She is definitely. It's funny that no matter how many shows and how great the show goes and how much the ministry goes, and when I get back to the bus at night, she's the one that's always like, hey, bring it down.
Yeah. And a lot of times the wife's real quick to point out what you shouldn't have said.
Well said. Oh yeah, she's very good at that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, mine is too. So Johnny, let's just go way back to the beginning. Tell us where you were born, and what were your influences? What made you decide, I want to be a musician, I want to be a singer, I want to be a preacher? Just how did that come about?
Wow, that's a whole loaded question, and I'll do my best to synopsize it. But I'll say this, that I was born in Tulia, Texas, right outside of Amarillo. It's a little bitty town, cow town there, but I have a very convoluted early years syndrome. My father was in the Army and served in Vietnam, and so a little bit of my life shifted when he went off to Vietnam. When he came back from Vietnam, we met him in Germany, where he was stationed in Mannheim, Germany, and spent 3 years there. And the reason that's an important understanding is that that's where our church that I ended up growing up in kind of started. My pastor was the chaplain in the military in Germany, and then and we formulated a church there. I got saved there in 1976, and then we moved. He moved when we all kind of went our separate ways back to the States. One by one, those families, pastor went to Sierra Vista, Arizona, and started a church there called Shiloh Christian Center. And little by little, those influenceable families, those foundational families, all ended up coming to Sierra Vista. What brought us to Sierra Vista is when Dad got back from Germany, we moved to Oklahoma, and I have at that time, very bad, untreatable asthma. So the doctors recommended that we move to Arizona. And the one place that Dad had been in Arizona was Fort Huachuca, which happens to be Sierra Vista. Hey. And when he got to Sierra Vista, lo and behold, there's our pastor from Germany, and he had started a church and a school, and really a profound God thing in my life, that that became like a root of my life was Shiloh, Pastor Tompkin, Shiloh School, all that kind of stuff. So just almost miraculous. It's a pretty cool story.
It is. It really is.
I'm not doing it, but yeah, it's really cool. And all those people came. All those people from Germany ended up being in Sierra Vista, little by little, weird story upon weird story, miraculous. How I got into, I sang obviously in choirs and all that kind of stuff in school. At Shiloh, everybody, because it was a small Christian school, everybody was commanded to do every activity, including basketball, including choir, all those kinds of things, including handbells, which was not this old. Wow. No, I didn't enjoy it. So we had to do it all. Yeah, right. And to a certain degree, that kind of pushed me away from music, and kind of I kind of got into a rebellious level early on, and I more liked the rodeo world and that whole aspect of kind of rebellious cowboyism, Yeah. And what's interesting is that I had a very unique personal relationship with God, but I had a real profound dislike for religion and religiosity, even early on. And I found at my school, there were everybody there were good Christian kids, and I didn't want to be like them at all.
When you say religion, what do you mean by that?
And I'm so glad you asked that. I like to distinguish between religion and religiosity. When I say religion, most people have a connotation of religion being following Christ. That's a religion. I find that Christianity was never supposed to be a religion in the first place. It's people who follow Christ.
Christ-like.
Christ. Yeah. But man then takes that and formulates that and makes it into a bunch of ways that we get to him rather than receiving that he came to us.
Doctrine.
That's what I love theology. I love there's certain doctrine's good, theology's good, but when it separates us and causes us to be all about what you can't do and rules and regulations, more, in my opinion, it's more damaging than good. So
it is.
Yeah. So I even at young age, I pushed against that, and maybe kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater, if you know what I mean. I kind of was so against religiosity that I pushed anything that had to do with God kind of away. And
most teenagers and adults, when you start saying, okay, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. Why would I want to be part of that? That I can't do anything. So I can understand.
And what's interesting to me is that I actually had a valid, deep, loving relationship with God, and like a very I was a worshiper from the time I was saved at 7 years old. I was a profound worshiper, and that never left. I just didn't like the religiosity of it all, and so. But then I talked to some young people the other day, and I said the problem is that by pushing that away, I kind of, like I said, threw the baby out with the bathwater, and then the next thing I know, that kind of led me astray as well. So finding the balance is very important, very key. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. So
go ahead.
I was going to say, so from there, what you kind of strayed away from the Lord then through all that?
Yeah, a little bit. I never. What's interesting is I never really strayed away from. The long and short of it is I never really strayed away from my heart being connected to His. I just worked too hard to not go to church, too hard to not be around Christians, too hard to not be in my word, to, all those kinds of things, and realizing that I was pushing away the very things that I needed. And in that time, I when it got involved with all my friends that were rodeo guys and all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting kind of connecting this to the music part of it is at that time is, you know, the 70s and the 80s, there was late 70s, early 80s, there was this hole as far as music goes that I just I didn't like what I would call urban cowboy age. I didn't.
Right.
I was so against that, anything to do with that. And up came this man named George Strait, who came into my life.
Oh yeah.
Not personally, but you know what I'm saying. And
yeah,
this George Strait man came in and he was wearing my jeans. You know, the jeans that I bought at Yellowfront, not because they were cool, but because they were the least expensive pair of jeans, and to make them look better, we pressed them, and he was wearing my boots, and they weren't the expensive, nice, you know, Hollywood boots. They were the Walkman boots that you could get mud and junk off of easier, and he was making it look. He was cowboy, you know, and he took my shirt and pressed it and made it look good, and then he sang my kind of music, and it impacted me. I mean, I think I was all of 13, 14 years old, and he just impacted my life. And I would say that I kind of turned towards him almost, you know, like, he was a large influence in my life.
Oh yeah.
I can remember. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, talking about George Strait, I can remember, it must have been right when he first came out, and I don't know if he didn't have a hit yet, but I can remember one time we were coming, when I was with Mid-South, we were between Dallas and Texarkana, I believe, on Interstate 30, and we were in our bus, and we came up behind another bus, and it was an old Trailways bus, and so we were coming around it, passing it, and it said George Strait on the side. Like, who's George Strait, you know, back then. And so this guy, I saw this guy, he walked down where the driver was, he walked down the steps and was looking out the window to see who we were. Yeah. And it was George Strait. Yeah. It was George Strait. And then, oh my goodness. I mean, it wasn't 2 or 3 months after that. I think was it Amarillo by Morning was his first big hit.
Yeah, probably big hit. Yeah, Amarillo by Morning was
that was out. It said hit. George Strait. Like, that's that guy we passed not too long. Now he's got a #1 song. My goodness, wow, that's pretty cool. You know.
Yeah, that's a great story. I didn't know that about it. I kind of have a similar story in that my dad was the owner of a car dealership, and we were going we were leaving Sierra Vista, Arizona, which is, for those of you who don't know, that's down by Tombstone. Yeah. Arizona, and we were coming up, and we're heading we're going to Missouri to pick up some trucks, and my dad had a big car hauler kind of truck, and it was early in the morning, and we're on I-10 going towards New Mexico, and we're in a big old long line convoy of trucks, and Dad pulled out that song Amarillo by Morning was playing on the radio, and the fiddle part of the end of that hitting. Beautiful. And Dad pulled up out of there. We started heading towards the sunrise, and I'm like, this is life right here. Yeah. I'll never forget it.
When that intro, that song kicks off, it's like all you can think about is cowboys, bull riding, horses. I mean, that's what you picture in your mind as soon as that thing kicks off, you know. Yeah, it's awesome.
I think the thing that hit me about it too was that he brought classic back to cowboy. Yeah. You know, there was this line, you know, to be cowboy means you know they were intermixing the word redneck and things like that. And I didn't like, you know, to me, my family were classic, clean cut country cowboy people, and so he brought that back to me and brought some. I don't like this word usually, but pride, you know, some pride in my heritage, you know, and I really enjoyed it. So, yeah.
You know, speaking of urban cowboy days, this is another Mid-South thing, which I have so many stories, but back in, I think it was 95 or 96, we went to Germany to do a festival over there, a Christian country festival in Germany.
Wow.
And it was different than what you would see around here in the United States.
Sure.
We got there and everybody looked like Urban Cowboy. They were dressed like Urban Cowboy. This was 95 or 96. And I thought we went back in time, you know, and everybody on stage that sang secular country music. And it was a Christian country festival. And
isn't that fun?
And they had a little trailer set up in the behind the stage for the artists and stuff to hang out. So we were in there and waiting to go on, and they had cases of beer everywhere. And this was this was a Christian country festival, and they offered it to us, you know, and we, you know, of course we said we don't drink, you know.
Right.
He looked at us like, what? They drink beer like Coke.
Oh yeah. Don't mess with the beer drinking German. Come on.
We said, man, y'all have a Coke or Dr. Pepper? But what? Beer, you know? It's like, no, we don't. So anyway, it was like going back in time.
I can't believe you'd have the audacity to ask them if they have Dr. Pepper in Germany.
Well,
that is opposite.
I knew they probably didn't have sweet tea, so, you know, I had to go for the next best thing.
So just kind of moving forward in that story is I started to emulate him and to sing like him. And I actually, my parents didn't know that I sang. No one really knew. I didn't do it publicly. I actually built a little studio in my closet, and I was the typical closet singer. And I would, I didn't have karaoke back then or nothing, but I would take his tapes and I would play his tape, and then I had it set up to where I could record myself singing to his tape, and then I could hear where I would miss it, where I would get flat or sharp, or where I would make the mistake, and I'd go back and fix it and go back. And then what I was accidentally doing was also picking up his nuances of his style and his even his phrasing and his dialect. And if you listen, what's interesting is, although I'm from Texas, if you listen to my family, I have a much different accent than the rest of my family. And a lot of that is because I emulated George Strait so much that I kind of lost my own sound, you know, dialect, accent, whatever you want to call it. And then later that actually kind of came into play, where I had to, at some point, I had to realize I'm not George Strait. I'm not ever going to be George Strait. And so I needed to find out who I was. And I needed to kind of relearn and find out my own stylings, if you will.
Yeah. Well, he was good to emulate, that's for sure. that's a good way to start right there. So once you started, you know, listening to George and other artists that were coming out back then, and listening to them, and you were kind of getting into it. So when did you decide, hey, I think I can do this? I think I can go out and sing. Were you singing country music, or were you trying to sing Christian music as like a country singer would sing?
Yeah, interesting. Great question. Interesting for me, I never did sing secular country music. I never had a desire for that. I never had a desire to sing music, period. That wasn't what I was doing. Two things that kind of happened all at the same time is on my, I think, 16th birthday, my mom gave me a tape of this band called Petra. And they were Christian rock. And I'm not about rock at all, but I listened to this group, and what hit me so profoundly was, wait a minute, they're taking a music and then they're interjecting their relationship with God in that music. So what you're telling me is I can sing music about God in the kind of music that I love. And that was like a light.
Yeah.
I'll never forget this. More power to you. In bawling my eyes out and realizing the bigger picture that, you know, like somebody dumbstruck me with, wait a minute, I can take country music and I can put my words about my father in that. And so that kind of started me on a journey. But my father was a car guy. He was a businessman, had car dealerships, and that's what I was going to do. I was just going to follow in his footsteps. He kind of moved me through the progression of the dealership and taught me all the back stuff. And I was going to college and getting my degree to do what he's asked me to do. And at the same time, I was in a discipleship program in my church for 3 years. And I kept getting prophecy after prophecy after prophecy, word after word, that you were going to be in the ministry.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this, And when I graduated, I was graduating my 3-year discipleship program and coming to the end of the college part of that. And not necessarily to graduation, but it was all coming to a head. And I started to feel this pull into ministry. I'm like, that's not what I wanted. So there was a lot of confusion. And I told my wife, I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go up on that mountain right there in Sierra Vista, Arizona, and I'm going to go camping. And I'm not coming down till I hear from God. And I was just that impetuous, just that bold. I really believed that God would answer me, you know. And I went up and was camped out on the spot. And I stood, I put all my stuff up. I'll never forget it. And I stood up on top of this mountain and cried out to God, what do you want from me? And you got to be careful of that, because God will answer,
Yeah, he sure will.
And I got an answer, and it was in the form of a vision. And I'm not weird like that. I don't usually I've only had 1 or 2 visions my whole life. And it was clear as a bell. It was a little, I don't remember if you know, these little 1960s TV that was about this big, gold.
Right. Yeah.
It was all gold, and it was black and white. And it just came up in front of me, and it showed me a picture of something that actually happened. I was in 8th grade, so I hope you're tracking with this. What I'm seeing on the TV was a scene of something that actually happened when I was in 8th grade. And that was, I was at a tent revival, and I was singing worship songs, and I leaned over to my mother and I said, when I sing about Jesus, it just seems like, man, when I sing about Jesus, it seems like my voice is better. It seems like there's something in me that is like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I had forgotten about that. And here I am on top of this mountain, and I see this vision, and I knew exactly that that's what I was supposed to do. And at the time, I'd never heard of this. I'd never heard of Mid-South. I never heard of Ken Holloway. I didn't know there was this was about 1992 or 93. I didn't even know this genre existed. In some ways, on top of that mountain, I believe that I had just had an epiphany that I was going to invent Christian country music. That's what it was. And I didn't know. So I went down from the mountain and went to a bookstore in Phoenix, Arizona, and to go a Christian bookstore to see what kind of music was out there. And I saw a cutout cardboard thing of this guy named Ken Holloway. Yeah. And he had a CD that he was selling in this store. And there was a part of me that was like, wow, that's so cool. And a part of me was like, wow, I missed it. And,
Ken Holloway invented it.
I got this right. Yeah. So what's really cool is that on the back of that CD was Ken Holloway's phone number, which is crazy. Yeah. And I just called and I said, hey man, God, blah, 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 blah. I told him the whole story. And 10 minutes later, he called me back and we became best of friends. He shipped me all of his tracks. He invited me to Nashville to the CCMAs that year, 1993. Yeah. Invited me to meet, and that's where I met all of Mid-South and all you guys and all. I mean, there's so many names I could throw out there of people that I got to meet that year. And Ken Holloway became like a mentor of mine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a cool story, man. And it's funny that you thought, man, I'm going to invent new style of music, Christian country. It was already,
Yeah.
it was already.
I actually named it. I thought I just to give you an idea. I actually messed it up and called it Country Christian.
Wow. Same thing.
Right, yeah.
You know, a lot of people probably don't know this, and I know you probably don't know it, but back in 1986, we recorded, it was records back then and cassettes. They didn't have CDs, but we recorded a record, and it was starting to lean a little less Southern gospel, a little more country. And so we were trying to come up with a name for the record, and everybody was coming up with things. And I said, you know what? We're Christians, and this is kind of like country music. So why don't we call it Christian Country Hearts? And that's what we named it back in '86. And that's when the term Christian country kind of began back then. It was either called country gospel or Southern country or whatever anybody wanted to call it. But Christian country was not a phrase that was used back then, a term that was used back then, until yours truly came up with Christian country hearts. I should have put a patent on that too.
You should have. You failed miserably. Yeah, and I think that's the thing that we have to give grace and understand there was no social media.
No.
We live in a different world than was back there. So I mean, it's the fact that there was a Ken Holloway statue or cut out cardboard thing of him, and there is a miracle that I just happened to walk in, because literally information wasn't shared like it is now, and it is crazy to all these years back, looking back, to find you and see how this thing actually evolved. I'm grateful I started in Christian country music, CCMA back in 1994 was my first year where I and Chuck Day was one of my first producers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was a good
time.
Another
great singer right there. I was reading your off your website, your bio, and you sold your house. You and your wife sold your house and bought an RV and hit the road. Now, I know a lot of evangelists, they do that per se, but what made you decide? See, I still have a house and I have an RV, but I don't want to live in that RV, not with 5 kids. What made you decide to just sell it all and go for it, man?
Well, I think just to kind of wrap that story, there's a lot of story in between, and there's a lot of midlife wrecks, and in a lot of hurt and a lot of pain, and when I hit that portion that you're discussing, this new, I look at my life as kind of divided in two. There was before the wreck and after the wreck, and when I'm not talking about a physical wreck, I'm talking about a spiritual wreck where religion really came back to bite me. And I also, back in the day, I got caught up in the whole Nashville machine and realized that I was trying to be somebody and trying to be known, and I allowed my flesh to really lead, and it crushed me. It destroyed me and in part then destroyed others, and went through turmoil really, really bad, and went through divorce and lost everything. I had a ranch in Montana, a 70-acre ranch raising horses, and lost all of that, and found myself as a bouncer at a bar in Toledo, Ohio, and angry and mean and fighting every night, and just kind of a vicious person, and that's actually where I met my current wife, in a bar in Toledo, and across from the depot. It really was. So the long and short of it is that she recognized me in that bar. She pulled me out of that bar. She rescued my life and got me back to going to church. And this time I went to a church that wasn't religious, but rather led me to Jesus and a real, true, in-depth relationship with him. And I saw the vast difference between this and this. And it impacted me so much that I just knew I had to share that. And it started me on a journey. But it was really her also that was like, this is what you're called to do, and we're now married, this is what we're going to do. And I'm like, that was what I did. I have a job now. I got a 401k. I got life insurance and health insurance and dental insurance, and I'm not quitting it. You know, I did that before. It all fell apart on me. I'm not doing it. I'm well off. We'll do it on the weekends and have fun, you know? And she's like, no, this is what you've been called, appointed, and anointed to do, and you're going to do it. So we actually literally fought all the time. And to make this a short story, as quick as I can, we went to a conference in Atlanta, and she believed God was going to give a word to us to wake me up. And he did. And it was a word, the last day of the conference, a lady named Cheryl Brady got up and she spoke about bold moves. And she said, it's time for you as a cowboy to get back on your horse. That was the first thing she said. And then she said, your bald spot ain't getting no smaller. In other words, you're getting old, you know, you better get going. And that you're supposed to do this. And we left there, and my wife's like, there you go. There's your word. What are you going to do about it? And I'm like, nothing. You're crazy. And we literally, like, it made it worse, like intense. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. You don't know how hard it is out there. You don't know how it feels to have to rely on people and all this kind of stuff. And she said, you don't rely on people. You rely on God.
That's right.
And I couldn't argue with her any longer. And so I can't go into all the details because it takes too long. But the bottom line is that it just came to where I submitted to the Father and just said, you know what, God, whatever you want. I'm tired of fighting her. I'm tired of fighting you. I'm tired of arguing. And I'm ready to submit to that, and however you want it to happen. And that I literally just took a step of faith, left my career, sold everything I owned, sold my home, put everything else in storage that we couldn't sell. We bought a piece of junk motorhome, gas, south wind.
Why would you do that if you sold everything? You should have had enough money to buy a pretty nice one. Why did you buy a piece of junk?
Yeah, because I was still in my flesh, and I wasn't trusting God. I was eating my nest egg. You feel me? I was
okay, I got you.
This is my safe place, and I'll buy this piece. Here's what I really thought. I thought, I'm going to go get this piece of junk motorhome. We're going to go out there, and it's going to be complete failure, just like I thought it was going to be. And then I'll show her. You know what I mean? And she'll hate it. She'll hate being on the road. God just revealed himself, overflowed in my life. I don't care about the Nashville stuff. I don't care about all that stuff. Just the impact that we actually saw, effective, powerful ministry where lives were actually being changed, and our finances were fine. And she loved living in that piece of junk motorhome. She loved it. So
and it probably ran good too, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It had a couple things, and we realized, okay, we don't want a gas. You need a diesel.
Right.
You need the better the better frame and stuff like that. And then we started, but I have never regretted. Not only have I never regretted that, if I have regret is that I waited this long. I've had the most incredible the last 7 years. I cannot tell you what God has done in my life, and I cannot do anything but sit back and just I'm amazed at him. I have no other word, and none of it was what I did.
Everybody that I've talked to has kind of had a similar story where they had their plan, what they were going to do.
Yeah.
but it was not God's plan. When they finally
There it is.
submitted to God's plan, everything just fell into place perfectly. So that's what we got to do.
It's so easy to look back and say, man, I should have, but in the middle of that was a very hard thing. It was a very hard decision, you know, and there was a portion of me that I thought, I'm too old now. I missed it.
Yeah.
There was a self-hatred that was kind of going on, like, man, I can't sing. I can't do, I'm 43 years old. I can't do this. You know, what am I doing? I missed it. God, you know, and I would come up with all kinds of excuses about it's too late. I missed it. Let me just promise you, it's never too late. Never too late.
You know, I kind of thought the same thing, because I'd been out of the professional music business since '97. And so I got real involved in my church and started running sound. Church about 2,500 people. And of course, I worked a day job every day. And but that calling was still there. You know, I knew that God called me when I was just a teenager to sing, travel, to minister. And I was scared to the thought of going on my own and not being with a band, a bunch of guys, because I had never done any of the business side of it. I never had to book dates. I never had to even talk on stage. All I had to do was show up with my bass guitar, get on the bus, and drive the bus and unload the equipment, set it up, tear it down, load it back up, get back on the bus, drive. That's all I had to do and sing. It was a pretty good gig. But the thought of having to do all the business side of it, it scared me. And I thought too, you know, I was about 44. And I was like, man, I'm just too old, you know, and who wants me, you know, and all this. And so I finally decided, God, if you want me to do this again, you're going to have to open the doors. And so I started sending out some emails to some pastors, and immediately they all started responding, yeah, we'd love to have you. Yeah, we remember when you was with Mid-South, you know, we'd love to have you come sing. And so I just, you know, I submitted myself. I put myself, what I thought, aside and let God have it. And he's taken it, and it's just, like you say, I wouldn't trade it. It's been a wonderful ride. No. God, I've seen people saved. I've seen lives changed. This is our 12th year of doing it as a family. And it's pretty awesome. And to see my kids grow up and become as talented as they are and pretty as they are. And of course, they get that from their mama. I am just a blessed husband and dad. And God has just really blessed me.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing too, is that I have the full support of all three of my kids, and they're all, thankfully they're all grown, and you know, they helped me with all the media stuff and all of the, I mean, they've just been, you know, I actually had, my wife is very young looking. She's actually real close to my age. Yeah. Right. And all these people were like, you know, how dare you leave your kids at home and try. I'm like, my kids are grown. You know, I mean, I think about a Greyhound, they're gone, you know, so they are all very successful, all graduated, awesome. You know, college. And I'm very extremely happy. And I just, the thing that I just feel like there might be somebody watching even this right now that is, wondering where they fit in to the ministry of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And maybe you discount yourself because maybe you don't think you have the talent, or maybe you don't, and maybe you don't. I mean, it's really, thankfully, it's not all about the talent. It's about the anointing, and the anointing has all to do with presence of God in your life. And but maybe you're there. And I just, my heart is to say to you, anybody watching, that it's not limited to anything natural. This is a supernatural God that we serve, that has supernaturally imparted his heart into us. We get to be co-laborers with the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. It doesn't really even need us, and yet he chooses to co-labor with us, and we get to be on his team.
That's right.
I don't know to what capacity that may look like, but all I know is that that it's the greatest honor of my life to be on that team.
Same here, man. It's an honor, and all you got to do is just be willing. Say, Lord, I'll when you say, I'll do what you want me to do, I'll go where you want me to go, I'll be what you want me to be. You're opening yourself up to anything. I mean, a lot of people don't want to pray that prayer because the first thing they think, he's going to send me to some third world country as a missionary. But man, the harvest is ripe right here, man. He needs some workers
Mission
right
Field
here.
America. Yes. We did a thing out in, it's funny because we were out in Oregon and Powder River, Oregon. And this rancher calls me up and he's like, hey, can you come out to my ranch and do a concert out here? And I'm like, absolutely. I don't care. We don't talk. That's a whole nother conversation, but we just say yes. We just go. We don't ever, we like to take away the element of no and just wherever if God opens the door, we're going to go. And so I didn't ask questions and we start getting out there and he says, make sure you park your bus in town and I'll have a Suburban waiting for you in town because your bus or your vehicles won't traverse this. And that was my first thing, like, oh man,
Oh, no.
what have I got myself?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And we started going and just, and it's 5 miles of nothing and nothing. And I'm like, man, TD Jakes wouldn't do this. That's what I was thinking.
Exactly.
And as we cross this hill, I'm literally thinking and saying out loud, ain't nobody gonna be here. This is ridiculous. Nobody's gonna be here. And we crossed this hill and looked in this valley, and there's ranchers just everywhere, and just a fresh cut field of wheat had been fresh cut. He put a stage out there, and there's I don't know how many the number was, but all kinds of ranching families out in this valley. Yeah. And we go down there, and I'm like, this is Mission Field America right here.
Yeah.
And 3 ranchers, we're talking about hard people, got born again that day. Awesome. And I'm just sitting there looking at that and thinking, you could not, there's no way you can write that down in a book of quality leads and business sense and make it all. You know what? Just let God put you where he wants to put you.
Oh yeah, for sure. Man, I love talking with you. You got a great story, and how God has used you and your wife. Where can you got music out there? Where can people find your music?
Yeah, well, thankfully, this is one thing I was going to say is what a great day and age that we live in with this social media, because things have. I look back and how was I at any way successful back in the 90s with none of this?
They had to rely on radio, and if they got on TV, that was a big deal. And
that was a big. And I got hooked up with a guy named Vern Jackson who put me on TBN, and at that time that was a huge opportunity for us. It made such a big difference. But if you talk about selling CDs, the only way you sold CDs is if you just happened to be where I was.
Exactly.
People didn't do this. So we obviously there's Facebook. I do a short word every single morning on my Facebook. Tuesday through Friday. Right. A short word. It's called Find Your Freedom, and it's usually anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour of a message that God is revealing to me. We also have a YouTube account where it's kind of an interesting twist. We use our YouTube for our travels. We make little miniature movies of all of our travel and put it on YouTube of our living in an RV, and we've become experts in RV living, trust me.
Oh, yeah. Actually before I think I had already met you, but for some reason I was looking on YouTube and I saw a video of you showing how to change the oil in your RV. Now this was when you had you had the gas one before you got the new one you got now.
Yeah.
And you were showing everybody how to change and I just got one and I was like, I'm going to watch this because I've never changed the one in an RV before. So I'm going to see how he does this. So you kind of taught me how to do it.
That's funny. I didn't even know that. You never shared that with me.
Sure
funny.
did.
Yeah. And those videos have gotten like thousands of views. It's crazy, you know, and I, so anyhow, it's just, that's what our YouTube is about. Then thankfully all of our music is on iTunes and Amazon Music and all that stuff. But I've got a new CD that I decided not to put in the electric stores, you know what I'm saying? On all the
digital downloads.
I decided to make digital downloads, right? Thank you. Electric store. Good job, John.
You're showing your age, John.
Yeah, right. Electric store.
Electric store.
Long story short is I decided I wanted that to be more personal. It's a live album that I did right here in Micanopy, Florida at the Honky Tonk and Opry with Jace Harold. And I, unbeknownst to me, it was being recorded live. And what's really cool about that is for the first time in my career, what we do, you as well, you know, we don't just go up there and sing song after song after song. We minister in between songs and might have a word. And, you know, and what I love about this new CD is for the first time in my life, what I actually do was captured.
Yeah.
And because I didn't know it, it's authentic and really, and when I say authentic, like I made him leave all the mistakes in it, all the sharps, all the flats, everything, because I wanted it to be transparent and real. Yeah.
Right. That's cool, man.
You get that. Yeah, it is really, it's really, and it's kind of a throwback country, you know, stuff. They can get that at johnnyrowlett.com. That's the only place.
How you spell your last name?
ROWLETT, Rowlett.
JohnnyRowlett.com. And you have a Facebook page, Johnny Rowlett.
Yes, sir. And we have a like page called where it's Johnny and Gail Rowlett.
Johnny and
because
Gail.
my wife has a powerful ministry called Gail's Hope Bags, and she's actually wanting me to go right now. We're going to go pass out. She takes these gallon-sized bags and puts water and toiletries and toothbrush and toothpaste, and we go on the streets and find people that we can go bring those bags to and pray for them and love them.
Awesome.
And so that's why it's John and Gail Rowlett on that.
That is really awesome. And I encourage, if you're a pastor watching out there, get them in your church.
Oh, thank you.
Have awesome ministry. And you can preach, you can sing, your wife can preach or teach.
Come on.
I mean, y'all got it going, man. Y'all got it going. Man, I appreciate you coming.
And I just want to say really quickly, you do too. Your family is such a blessing. And I want to say this without doing any damage to anything else. I think now the lesson that we've learned from the first half of our career to this half is that God is about authentic, being transparent, being real, conversing with people, truly loving people through music, through testimony, through preaching. And what I love about Bobby Bowen and his family is that when they come in, wherever they come in, because there are a lot of people going to watch this that are my followers of me, pastors. When they come in, the family comes in, and from knowing him behind the scenes at the Grand Ole Opry House, behind the scenes, we've seen each other. He's the real, authentic deal, and anything that he's doing, I'd be part of.
I appreciate that, really, really do, and I appreciate you just sharing your heart. And I can tell you got a passion to see people saved and lives changed, and that's what we're here for. I mean, I really believe that we're coming down to the last days, and we got to get them in, man. We got to do all it takes to get them in.
Harvest is white.
It's out there for sure. Johnny, thank you so much. Tell Gail I said hi, and I'll be checking y'all out on the road again. And you folks watching, go check him out, JohnnyRowlett.com, and Johnny and Gail Rowlett from Facebook. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Johnny
Exactly.
Rowlett.
Or Johnny Rowlett personal page, but yeah.
Johnny Rowlett personal page, yeah.
Gail is
y'all go.
spelled G-A-L-E. So
What's that?
Gail is spelled G-A-L-E. Like Gale Force
G-A-L-E.
Winds.
Okay, not G-A-Y-L-E or G-A-I-L.
Don't get it.
Okay, man. Thanks a lot so much. And, man, I can't wait to see you again one of these days when all this mess is over
Bobby,
with.
for having me. Let me know when this goes, because I want to share it with people. I want people to know about you as well. God
All
bless
right.
you all. Thank you.
God bless you. We'll see you later.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.